Welcome to the Digible Dudes podcast. I'm David, and I'm here with special guest today.
Nicole.
Special guest. You see that?
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, Nicole, you're our VP of Client Services, as probably anybody listening knows. It seems like you talk with almost every single client that comes to the door at some point. But today you wanted to get on because you've been diving deep into cookies and cookie-geddon, or as most people are calling it. And so I thought it would be a good time now that a lot more is starting to get publicized on the subject to just try to simplify it and clear up some of the noise. So why don't you walk us through, kind of the history, like what's been happening over the last couple of years and what's going to be happening over the next year?
Yeah, I think you and I were just talking about this, that we were surprised that we weren't hearing more about cookies and what's happening, like from our clients or from the industry being multifamily. But I think we'll start to hear more now that Google has announced that in 2022, they are removing all third-party cookies. So I think it was kind of a slower build or rollout, I guess, with Firefox being the first one to announce and then Safari closely after. But now with Google Chrome, that's a bigger deal. So I think we are going to start hearing more about what that means for advertisers, but then also specifically for multifamily, how does that affect how we're targeting campaigns?
All right. Well, as we've talked about, I think a lot of people think that just cookies at large are going away, but that's not totally true. It's third-party cookies. So maybe just give me like a 101 crash course on first-party, third-party, and how much I should care.
I think that's one of the biggest takeaways. Like if you take away nothing else, I think the biggest thing is that not all cookies are going away. It is just third party. So the difference is that for first party cookies, that's really, you as a website owner or business owner, you're collecting data on people that are coming to your website one-to-one. So if they're putting something in their shopping cart, if they're browsing around different tabs on your website, everything they do on the website, you own. Third-party cookies is, collecting user information based on them visiting other websites that are not yours. So it's basically collecting their behaviors as they browse through the web. So I think that's really important because first-party cookies are not going away. So you still have the ability to target and specifically to retarget people who have been to your website.
Cool. So in apartments, though, we don't get a ton of traffic from a website. We might get 3,000 visits or something a month. So retargeting campaign is super effective, but you can't really you can't spend a lot there to fill your marketing funnel or anything like that. So if third-party cookies go away, what options do I have?
Yeah, I think we'll see some new things sprout up. So Google is working on what they're calling a unified ad ID. I think Trade Desk and LiveRamp are working on something similar, but basically a way to collect information that's not going to infringe on any privacy laws. So that you'll still be able to target people in this new way that they're working on it, this new tracking ID. You'll be able to target people like based on groups, but not specific to their one-to-one user data.
Yeah, I don't think of us as targeting people one-to-one anyways. So to me, this sounds a lot like what happened with Facebook a year or two ago or whatever after the HUD thing, where we had all of these targeting options and all of a sudden it got super narrowed down and we had like one segment that we could start grabbing unless you imported a segment, which was, renters. And when that happened, there wasn't a big impact to campaigns. We had been watching a lot of other agency campaigns and client campaigns as well as our own. And a lot of those campaigns actually start performing better once you removed all these targeting options and you just went with Facebook's renters. So it's almost like, John Henry, the fable of John Henry back in the day where, the machine was better than the humans with all their brain power. But do you think it's going to be similar with third-party cookies here with these new universal ad IDs and stuff? Are we going to see like much of a performance dip or, it may just be speculation. I'm just wondering.
Yeah, I think it's actually pretty similar. So Google has what they're calling FLoC or FLoC, their federated learning of cohorts, which basically groups users together to be able to target like-minded or like-interested users. And I think it's going to be something, performance-wise, it's going to be similar to what we saw now. Early results have it at 95% of conversions rates compared to third-party cookies. But to your point on Facebook, I think we're going to see this almost like back to basics, for lack of a better term, initiative within the industry where you'll see a lot more like context-based targeting, targeting people based on what content they're browsing. I think that's going to make a little bit of a resurgence.
Yeah, I'm a fan of contextual targeting because I just feel like it's more accurate. I never have trusted cookies fully. I know you and I have talked a lot about like how I used to share this like tool that would tell you what your cookie said about yourself. But since I'm on all these different websites every day for clients, my cookies they didn't really understand what I was. They thought I drove a Cadillac and played golf and was over 45 years old. Right. And versus like contextual targeting, I guess you could still say it could be wrong based on I'm browsing all these sites for clients. But if I'm on a running website or a running blog and I get served an ad about some shoes, that sounds pretty legitimate. And in this case, like if you're on a website about moving to Cincinnati and then you're an apartment in Cincinnati, then you just target people that are reading blogs about moving to Cincinnati. It seems like a pretty good fit. So I don't know. I like contextual targeting, and it's kind of interesting that it's fallen out of favor. So I welcome it back.
Yeah, I think for us, like when we talk contextual targeting, I think a lot about just our native initiative and basically injecting sponsored content into like an already existing news publication or lifestyle publication, whatever it may be. And basically serving ads to people as they're browsing content. So I think that's a really good use case of how contextual targeting works well for the industry. But I think there's a need for both. I think contextual targeting works well, but I also think we're going to need to find a solution to get a little bit more granular when we need to find high quality prospects.
So a little curveball here, not a big one, but I'm wondering, like, why do you think Google's doing this now too? Because there's been a lot of criticism of Google that like when they first started, they had, the mantra, don't be evil, right? And then a lot of people feel like as they got big and powerful, they have kind of had these evil tendencies. But, that happens with a lot of public companies. Like you're going after like whatever makes dollars. And so do you think, do they have this all for the right intentions that they really want like privacy, or is there some other added benefit to be like, all right, well, there's a heck of a lot of ad vendors out there today, and a lot of them monetize cookies as their revenue stream. And so if Google, which Chrome is, I think you were saying like 63% of all web traffic today, if that goes private too, now with Safari, Chrome, and Firefox, you kind of have everybody. And then if Google is one of only like 4 options that people have now to target people, then a lot of the I guess like the market that existed for all of these other vendors that people relied on kind of goes away. And now it's like Google or Trade Desk is kind of your option. So do you think this is goodness of their heart, or is this, or is it almost like great, both, it's good for people and good for us?
Yeah, I mean, obviously it's hard to say why Google's making this decision. I could also say, like, why didn't they do it sooner? I think this is the way the industry is going. I mean, privacy concerns around digital marketing have been here, forever. And I think we're finally making moves on it. So I do think it's for the right reasons. I do think it's a good change. To your point on, is it, self-fulfilling? I think even if it launches with 4 companies having a solution, within a year, we'll see dozens, if not hundreds of other solutions. So I think it will take off and other companies will get on board. But I do think it's the right thing to do for the industry.
In a way, I think there's some benefit here, like because you're cleaning house. Like when we look, like we had Manny at the summit last year from Rebel, and he was showing like how big the ad tech ecosystem is and how you can have like 6 or 8 layers of different vendors involved before one impression hits. And I feel like that's just a lot. Like it should be cleaned up. Now, I definitely want room for other tech and not just big tech. But it does seem like a nice chance to clean house on some of this data and some of the, hopefully some of the fraud too. Let me just say that because Manny has talked a lot about ad fraud from, like in that entire ad tech chain, you can just have all of these bad players that can siphon off impressions that people don't realize. And it just seems like it might help clean up some of that.
Yeah, I mean, even what you and I were just talking about a few weeks ago on the ad fraud that we're blocking from our Google Ads campaigns, I think it's $60K. I think that was annually.
That's a month.
Monthly. Wow. That's crazy.
Basically,
yeah, 60K that we're blocking from bots and competitor traffic. So it's nuts.
Right. Just underneath 10% of all traffic on Google ad campaigns that we see is bot and competitors. And so by blocking that traffic out for every campaign that we run, we're saving or, helping performance by 10% because, as you're saying, like 10% of traffic's bad traffic. All right. Well, anything else we should know about like what's coming in the year ahead? And if not, because I feel like I'll just say you said Google like upped its timeline. I feel like I've heard this like a half dozen times from Google. I mean, this wasn't true, but it was like in 2045 we're gonna do this, and then all of a sudden it's like 2022. I just feel like the bar keeps getting raised for them, and they're forced to move it sooner. So who knows? I mean, I guess at this point it's probably so close to 22 that they'll just wait till actually 2022. So is there anything else we should know about them or anything else? And if not, next question is like, how should people be communicating this to stakeholders like ownership or RPMs or whoever if they ask them about it?
Well, I think last thing before we get to stakeholders and how to communicate it, I think there also will be a rise in location-based targeting. So I think that's we talk about this a lot with fair housing, making sure that our campaigns, have a certain radius that we're targeting and that we're being inclusive. But location is kind of in that contextual targeting realm, I would say, but targeting people based on where they're at, because you're making assumptions of what their lifestyle is like based on the locations they're in. So I do think there's something there. We might see a shift there too. I
feel like you were channeling your inner John Silverman from prior X ad. Now it's called Ground Truth, but you remember this like 5-6 years ago, he was like, location is the new cookie, I
don't remember that, but I see it.
Yeah. I mean, he was like, people aren't like where they've been on the web. People are where they've been in real life was his whole thing. So it's like, if you've been to a Whole Foods and a yoga shop or whatever, and an apartment, then you know that you're probably a healthy, active living apartment dweller.
Well, yeah, that's still part of our strategy. When we talk about for our geo-fencing strategy, it's, targeting people based on where they are at the time that the ad is being served, based on where they've been, and then based on projections about where they're going. So I think that is a nice way to kind of like simplify how to get in front of the right user at the right time.
It's interesting is like location targeting a lot for geofencing in mobile, but it does extend beyond that. Like you can do it for other things. And a lot of what I had seen on like the universal ad ID and stuff was trying to still like tie multiple devices together anyway. So if their phone had been to these places and then they get back on their desktop, it's like, there's their Google account. And so they get bucketed into that active, healthy apartment dweller. Yep, exactly. And I think, I don't know much about the weedy part of the unified ad ID, but I think of it a lot as like the device ID, where it's like each device has an ID, whether that's your phone, your tablet, your computer, and tying all of that together to be able to target people or be able to target households as, you're sitting in front of your TV on your phone with your laptop, like just being able to pull it all together and target based on households versus third-party cookies. Cool. Well, communication. Yeah, I think we kind of hit on it earlier. I think the biggest thing to take away if this does come up in conversations is that first and foremost, not all cookies are going away. So you still have access to target people based on first party, and that there are current options in place that allow you to get at some of the targeting capabilities that third party is removing. So whether that's contextual targeting, some of the location-based stuff we just talked about, I think there are still ways to have effective targeting solutions, but without using that third-party cookie. Yeah, I feel like my message, if an owner was asking me, because we've had some marketers come to us and say, my owner read TechCrunch and they are blah, 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 or VentureBeat or something. It's like my overall thing would be like, hey, simmer down. Yes, it's happening, but it's happening it's going to happen to everybody. A lot of this is going to get simplified, but also a lot is still unknown. There's still 9 months left for Trade Desk and Google to figure out what they're doing. If those things don't get launched on time, because Google is just like anybody else, they're often delayed on what they launch, then you can default to contextual targeting in the meantime, and you'll be fine. So I just say like it is a big shift, but for our industry, I don't think it's not going to be this massive thing. I mean, also let's say, why it's not going to be massive is because a lot of our a lot of advertisers in the space are either spending on the ILSs, so no cookies involved there, or they're spending on search. Mm-hmm. And then the rest of the budget might be 30 or 40% of their spend. Mm-hmm. And that's what might be impacted. But it's not going to be like it's going to tank all of your digital campaigns, because your search is pretty much going to be working off the keywords anyways, and not as much of these other cookie initiatives. All right. Well, any final words?
No, I think we'll kind of learn more over the coming months and years. So it could be good for us to do a part 2 and kind of dive more into the weeds and kind of get into the actual capabilities of some of these newer solutions that are being proposed. But I think you hit it. Like right now, it's kind of like a hurry up and wait situation where it's not going to impact multifamily at least too much.
You know, there's one other really sad thing about this is before long, the word cookie is going to leave our vocabulary, and the word flock and universal ad ID is just not as friendly.
It's not. I was thinking that. I was like, I don't know who's in charge of branding for these things, but it needs some work.
Yeah, big time. It's just a disappointment. You think we'd get cooler, but it's like we get like less cool as the internet goes and become more corporate or something. Well, I don't know.
You know, digital marketing loves their acronym. So it's like any opportunity to throw another acronym in there, we're not going to miss that.
But we could come up with a more fun acronym than flock.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Totally.
All right. Well, there we go. We'll see you guys next time.